Good afternoon and welcome to Oslo Innovation Week 2021. My name is Vegard Andersen. I am from the Department of Business Development and Public Ownership for the Oslo City Government. I am standing in for Vice Mayor Victoria Marie Evensen, who, due to illness, was unfortunately unable to attend. Now, in the 17th year, Oslo Innovation Week is bringing together thousands of people from Norway, the Nordic countries, and all over the world. I admit that I'm a bit worn out by digital meetings, as I'm sure many of us are, and I cannot wait to be able to meet in person again. As we all know, magic happens when people meet. So next year, we hope we can welcome you in Oslo in person. However, digital meetings also gives opportunities for you to tune in from your home all over the world. In some ways, digital meetings makes participation easier, as it lowers barriers for some who otherwise might not attend. I am very excited to welcome you to this year's hybrid digital event, Oslo Innovation Week 2021. Last year, we focused on building back from the pandemic. This year, we are focusing on growth companies. This is a natural bridge, as so many companies have used the past year to regroup, strategize, and build. Now we are seeing the results of their efforts as more and more unicorns are popping up. Companies like Oda, AutoStore, Gelato, and Cognite are scaling quickly on the heels of Unicast, Elliptic Labs, Remarkable, and Kahoot. We want even more growth companies and create more jobs in a more sustainable industry. So what track would you like to attend or watch this week at Oslo's Innovation Week? There are 5 tracks covering exciting developments within areas such as the Nordic Model, scaling and scaling growth companies. With over 80 events to choose from, Oslo Innovation Week could not happen without the dedication of the 70 organizers and participation from 50 countries. Oslo Innovation Weeks have brought together founders who are building growth companies, venture capital firms investing in climate technology, and business and public sector leaders creating Nordic alliances and that give companies access to networks and top talent. On this occasion, we want to celebrate the creative entrepreneurs who are using new technologies to build innovative products and all those who are working day and night to create the next generation of sustainable business solutions. What could be a better time than the present to open Oslo Innovation Week with an award? The Oslo Innovation Award 2021 celebrates the companies that have succeeded in the entrepreneurs with the drive, the creative spirit, and the willingness not to give up. I'm very proud that Oslo has so many successful and inspiring companies that already have had a positive impact. The shortlisted nominees are Lexolve, Merete Nygaard, CEO and founder, Unacast, Kjartan Slette, COO and co-founder, Epigard, Ellen Katrine Hansen, CEO, Confrere, Svein Yngvar Villassen, CEO, Ocean Sun, Børge Bjørnklette, CEO and founder. I am relieved that I did not have to choose the winner. We did, however, have an expert jury, including 2 former winners and the CEO joining us all the way from San Francisco. The jury members are Laila Danielsen, CEO Elliptic Labs, Karen Dolva, CEO and co-founder No Isolation, and Paul T. Næss, co-founder Gelato. The jury concluded that this year's winners has a product the world will need now and in the future. This product is expected to be in most countries' inventory in their preparation for the pandemic and future threats from viruses. It's an invention made by doctors for doctors and is in use by many countries. They have a solid team and a well-executed strategy. Their revenues are impressive. In 2020, they had a turnover of 99.9 million Norwegian kroner, with a profit before tax of 46.2 million kroner, growing with 15 employees by August this year and 3 temporary employees in the UK and France. I think by now many of you know the product is EpiShuttle and the company is Epigard. Please welcome to the stage the winner of the Oslo Innovation Award, CEO of Epigard, Ellen Katrine Andersen.
Thank you, Vegard. First of all, I would like to thank the jury that have recognized Epigard as a worthy winner of the Oslo Innovation Award. against the other great nominees. At Epigard, we develop medical equipment that protect both patient and healthcare workers from infectious diseases. Last year, our foresight and ingenuity came to aid when the world needed us the most. In a matter of weeks, our core product, the EpiShuttle, entered multiple markets all over the world. For the past 18 months, we have worked day and night to produce and deliver a product to healthcare providers around the world. A product that has saved lives of hundreds of COVID-19 patients and protected thousands of healthcare professionals from reinfection. An invention developed by doctors for doctors. When the pandemic in India reached all-time high, EpiShuttle was put into transport of patients to Europe to initiate life-saving treatment. When the healthcare system in countries such as France and Switzerland were on the verge of breaking down, the EpiShuttle became an efficient tool when they transported patients to available intensive care capacity in Germany. In Norway, Canada and Denmark, we have ensured that armed forces have had the necessary equipment for safe transport of patients from remote areas to larger hospitals. We believe that this is the beginning. Our market is global. Our sustainable and effective product saves one while protecting everyone. Our skilled research and development team have worked non-stop for 7 years to develop sustainable and effective products that healthcare professionals are facing today and will face in the years to come. If we don't make an effort to help those who will treat us, will they be able to take care of us? And will the healthcare sector ever return to the old solutions? The answer to both questions is no. The pandemic has highlighted how vulnerable our healthcare system is. This challenge must be solved. Epigard is a part of the solution for future health preparedness. Our product has revolutionized the transport of infectious patients and ensured the capacity of healthcare system worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen Katrine. And now, on behalf of the City of Oslo, I hereby officially declare Oslo Innovation Week 2021 for open. Now I will give the word to Angela Holter. Angela is Managing Director of Astia Angels and today's host of the opening panel. The panel will discuss the foundations of business and why building a company with diversity, sustainability and collaboration values are good business decisions. Thank you very much. Welcome, Angela.
Thank you, Vegard. Congratulations, Epigard, for being the winner of the 2021 Innovation Award. And thank you, City of Oslo and Invention Norway, for making this week possible. I'm very excited and very grateful for being here with all of you today to open the Oslo Innovation Week 2021. In the last decade, I have witnessed how the Oslo Innovation Week has become a celebration of technology, entrepreneurship, and science, and a meeting place of the Nordic innovation ecosystem and its international friends. As we begin the week filled with innovative voices, with showcasing the new solutions to global challenges and collaborative efforts to help push our world forward, a remarkable woman and a keynote speaker is going to help us kick off the week. When we first met, I told her that I was starstruck, not only by her impressive career, as she's a very accomplished woman, but particularly by how fiercely and thoughtfully she fights for her cause. She has spoken in arenas like the White House and the United Nations about how to build inclusive ecosystems and how the importance of women is integral to innovation and to building high-performing teams. She is my boss, she's my friend, and she's also the CEO of Astia, a global organization that works to level the investment playing field for companies that include women. Her work has helped Astia grow from a small group of individuals in Silicon Valley 20 years ago to what it is today, a global community of more than 5,000 investors, entrepreneurs, family offices, and industry leaders. Please allow me to welcome Sharon Vosmek.
Thank you, Angela, and hello, Oslo. I'm delighted to be back for yet another conversation at Oslo Innovation Week. And thank you to the organizers for inviting me back for this conversation. Today, as in all prior conversations with you, I intend to talk about the innovation ecosystem and my thoughts around it. Today's topic is blind spotting. Some of you may have heard of the term blind spot, but maybe not blind spotting. The term was inspired by a 2018 film that I found extremely moving and insightful, and I thought that its learnings were relevant to innovation and the limitations that blind spots create for the innovation economy. For those who aren't familiar with the term, let me give a definition. Blind spotting is when a situation or an object or a person can be perceived in multiple ways, but you, the observer, can only see one. Blind spots are the foe of innovation, but they can unfortunately be built on our strengths. And the bad news is we all have them. I, for example, have a blind spot as it relates to entrepreneurs. I love them all. Many of you in Oslo have shared a conversation with me, and I find your work and your innovations inspiring. But thank goodness for the Astia team, the Astia community, and the Astia values of inclusion that ensure that my blind spots continue to be a strength for Astia. And where they are a weakness, others can fill the void. For investors, your blind spots often come in the form of your networks. Your networks are singular. They look and sound a lot like yourself. And what that means for you is you're missing opportunities. For entrepreneurs, your blind spots are even more worrisome. You can miss entire markets. You can miss opportunities. And worse, you can miss hurdles and obstacles. For the ecosystem, your blind spots have real consequences. They mean that the other is not welcome. The insiders become the only voice, and the ecosystem gets smaller and smaller in its understanding of the world and the problems that are needing to be addressed. Now more than ever, in this moment of pandemic, global financial crisis, climate crisis, feeding the planet, now more than ever, our blind spots have consequences, and we, the innovation economy, need to be ready to face them and address them. So what does this mean? I always come to Oslo with my own approach and my own thoughts about what we can do as individuals and as a community. And today, my call to action is ever clear. Number one, for investors, get out of your network, get out of your comfort zone. Dare to meet with the entrepreneur who maybe doesn't speak entrepreneur, but speaks business or science or innovation more soundly. For those who are entrepreneurs, build your teams robustly. Make sure that diversity is at the core of your team so that where markets move, you are ready to see and embrace the opportunity. And for you, the Norwegian ecosystem that supports and embraces and propels these innovations to market. Be inclusive. Dare to wrap your arms around all who want to participate, and welcome in and invite in those who may not yet have identified their full potential as it relates to innovation, but who you know will help the economy grow, become vibrant in innovation, and help drive those innovations to market. So I stand with you today in front of the gorgeous Golden Gate Bridge and our beautiful Karl the Fog, in hopes that we can continue to deepen our relationship together. And you in Oslo can continue to build the innovations and the startups that are so needed globally to address all of our challenges. And that you will continue to do it the Norway. Take care, all. Back to you, Angela. Be well, stay safe.
Thank you, Sharon, for that keynote. The Nordic model has proven its success in numerous areas, from competitiveness and innovation to happiness and gender equality, based on trust, social welfare, high levels of education, and belief in science. The Nordic region is a world leader in digitalization, innovation, and the most needed green shift. This is the background for smart growth in the Nordic model. But the question is, how can business leaders and entrepreneurs implement in their daily operations a business culture that fosters innovation, attracts and retains the best talent, and betters technology? This is the question that we're going to be discussing today. To discuss also about the drivers and accelerators of innovation and business growth, I welcome to the panel 4 remarkable and inspirational individuals. They are Marit Rødevand, CEO and founder of Strise; Idar Kreutzer, CEO of Finance Norway; Katrine Marcal. She's the author of books like Who Cooked Adam Smith's Dinner and Mother of Invention; and Babou Olengha-Aaby. Babou is the founder and CEO of The Next Billion. Welcome to the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So I'm going to start with a one-on-one. So with a question for each one of you. The first question, Marit, is for you. Would you use a couple of minutes to tell us who you are and your take on innovation?
Yeah, so Marit, CEO of Strise, and Strise is an AI company that understands and connects unstructured online data about businesses to create a new type of customer management platform. So through connected insights, we help our customers work smarter within like sales, risk, and anti-money laundering. So for instance, Danske Bank, they use Strise to know their customers, to prevent bad players to accessing financial services and prevent money laundering. You know, and the product is great, but Strise didn't start off as a great product idea. It was actually a research project, an AI research project at NTNU. So when me and my 2 co-founders spun this out of the university, it was like we knew we had to be innovative in order to take this to market, to build a product and an organization. And you know, we knew we would have to pivot. We knew we would probably fail many times. But it's really hard to say to someone, be innovative. So it's impossible. Like, how do you just be innovative? So we implemented something core, a different take on core values from day one in the organization. So instead of just describing things you should be, we tried to describe behaviors we thought was important in order to become innovative, which is you are Strise, make decisions, smart but uncomfortable. If something seems smart but uncomfortable, you should do it. And the last one is advantage Strise. Unexpected things will happen, make them our advantage. And this has helped us go from research to market, and it's helped us grow from 3 people to now we're 20 plus. And every day and every week in our all-hands company-wide meeting, we go through these core values and try to highlight people who'd made decisions, or if you were smart but uncomfortable the past week, in front of everyone. And I think that has helped us at least become innovative. And one of my big jobs as CEO is to kind of defend people's right to make also bad decisions, because a lot of bad decisions will happen along the way when you try to be innovative. So that's at least my take on it, and that's worked for us.
Wonderful. Brave CEO.
Brave
Good.
employees making decisions.
Fantastic. Thank you. Idar, tell us about you and your take on innovation.
I am the CEO of Finance Norway, which is the industry federation for the banks and insurance companies working in Norway, 240 companies with 50,000 employees. And, if you look at financial services, it's a story about innovation. Financial services has reinvented itself fundamentally over the last 20 years and is now probably the most digitized industry in Norway, and innovation is an important part of that. Besides being CEO, I'm the father of 5, and that needs innovation too to meet the demands and expectations of of a bunch of kids. But being a little bit philosophical about it, Aristotle appeared to have said that the definition of madness must be to keep on doing the same thing and expect a different result. Well, society now, we are in a situation where we need different results. We need to get more out of less. We need to accelerate the green shift. We need to meet the demands of the many without destroying the planet. So the need for innovation, new ways of solving problems, new ways of working together is extremely important. So innovation to me is key.
Thank you. Thank you. Katrine, or Katrine. We say Katrine in Norway.
Hi.
So,
Yes.
Katrine, so tell us a little bit about you and what innovation means to you.
Yes, so I'm a Swedish author, a best-selling author on women and economics, but I'm based in the UK. And my first book, Who Cooked Adam Smith's Dinner, was translated into more than 20 languages. And I have a new book out, which I guess is why I'm invited here, because it's all about innovation. It's called Mother of Invention, How Good Ideas Get Ignored in an Economy Built for Men. And it is exactly about that, about the huge need for innovation and how we are kind of holding ourselves back because we are not using the innovative potential of all of humanity. And the book looks into all of the reasons how women are shut out from innovation and what that costs us. And it actually starts with this classic mystery of innovation, which many economists have talked about, which is the fact that we didn't get wheels on suitcases until 1973, which is strange because we invented the wheel about 5,000 years earlier. And there's been many theories to that, but actually the explanation that is the correct one, I believe, and that's how I start my book out, is that it had to do with gender. There was this really strong assumption that no man would ever roll a suitcase with wheels. And this invention was turned down by so many people. And even after the suitcase with wheels was sort of reached market in the 1970s, no American department store first wanted to sell it because they thought no man would ever buy this product. And the women who travel alone are too small of a market. And it actually took until the end of the 1980s for this product that we now take for granted, the suitcase with wheels, to really catch on. And that's where the book starts, and it goes into lots of these hopefully concrete examples to how we sort of hold innovation back in the economy because of these ideas we have on gender, from rolling suitcases to electric cars, even to AI. So that's my perspective on innovation. It's sort of trying to highlight all of these sort of unnecessary reasons how we hold it back because of these ideas of gender.
Wonderful. I'm going to read that book, both because I haven't read the first one, that's for sure. Babou, now to you. Babou is a friend of mine, actually, and I'm a big fan of Babou's bravery. Babou, would you tell us about you and your take on innovation?
Thank you, Angela. So I'm the founder of The Next Billion, and we're a tech for good company, startup.
We started in Norway and now we're moving to the UK. And really what we do is build products and services that we say, deliver visibility as a service to women in business globally. And this is because I truly believe that visibility is one of the key factors needed to unlock access to growth opportunities for women, so access to markets, to funding. So we have two main products at the moment, which is Globally Spotted, which is our global search engine for women-owned businesses. So you can find products and services by women-owned businesses to incentivize consumers to start thinking about, how to vote with their wallets and search for products and services, but at the same time support the growth of women-owned businesses and their economic growth as well. And then we also have Profileme, which is our on-demand portrait photography service. And really, Profileme is a different take on diversity. For us, it's really about promoting and encouraging women to show up and to be seen, to be recognized, and to be more visible. And because we all know the power of representation. So these are the two complementary products that we have. And my take on innovation is really, on a personal level, I think innovation is about seeing things differently. And at the outset, which is very much at the core of what we do as a business. Our vision is to change the way we see business, one woman, one company, one find at a time. And I think that the premise of seeing things differently is also embedded in education, in how we are nurtured. So there is this element of, you can learn about innovation at university, but I think as well there is a nurture aspect to innovation culture, whether it's in a company, like Marit mentioned, is that you have to cultivate it. And I think it's very important to cultivate that kind of mindset very early on in young people, because it makes it easier for young people to take more risks. So I actually believe that innovation, like diversity, is a mindset. I often say that diversity can't live without inclusion and can't live without belonging. And I think it's similar with innovation. Just like with diversity, diversity is about access into our room, whereas inclusion is about having that seat at that table. And belonging is about having that voice. So in terms of innovation, I think we need to cultivate destigmatize innovation in the hands of a few. It should be something that everybody in a company can take ownership of and feel that they can contribute to. It can't be a department issue, this department, or a level, top management owning the innovation factor in the company. So really, I come from a place where innovation is about also bravery, seeing things and trying things and failing, and being supported in that culture of taking risks, of failing but learning from the failures, and thinking outside the box. So I think in terms of globally, culturally, I think one of the things also stopping us in terms of accelerating innovation in sectors where it really matters, such as sustainability, is also a paradigm shift. We talk a lot about, we all know that we have the capability and the mental capacity to develop innovative products. But I think we see that the adoption of those technologies often is slow. And I think that's linked to there needs to be a consciousness shift along with innovation. So that's really my take on innovation.
Thank you, Babou. Always great to hear you. And I do reiterate what I said. It comes down to bravery. I do believe that what Marit said, put it into context of a business culture, daring to make mistakes and daring to say, oh, this didn't work out, let's try another way of doing this until we reach our goal. I think that that's to the core of that. And I have the first question for the group. What makes the Nordic model an example for the rest of the world to follow? Idar.
There are obviously there are some cultural elements in the Nordic model that's not easily copied by everybody. But if you think about it, there are 2 or 3 elements that's very, very important. The income differences are relatively small. On a global basis, lowest in the world. The social mobility is relatively high. So the American dream is not something that happens in America because the social mobility is extremely low. The Nordics are characterized by high social mobility. It's a dynamic society. And then the third element has to do with what we call flexicurity. And that's the combination of flexibility and relatively high level of social security. So if you take risk, if you are brave and you fall, you know that you do not fall to the bottom. So the risk of taking risk is relatively low compared to other societies, and that has a number of positive effects. This is one of the most dynamic, I mean the Nordic countries, we have one of the most dynamic economies on the planet, where people are changing jobs relatively quickly. And it's relatively easy to close down one business, release the resources and put that into another business with better prospects. Just compare what is happening in Norway with what is happening in France. I mean, if you try to do anything different from yesterday, there are strikes all over the place, so you're not able to do anything. But here it's relatively easy. And that has to do with flexicurity. And the cultural element that ties all of this together is trust. Historically, trust-based societies. And the economic value of trust is very, very high. So I guess that's some of the characteristics. And it's very easy to turn that into the innovative ecosystem and think through, okay, if that kind of characteristics also is implemented in an innovation ecosystem, well, perhaps that works very well. Perhaps that's very dynamic. Perhaps that creates a lot of new ideas.
Right. And on that, Marit, how all of that reflects on a day-to-day business culture?
I think definitely the trust element is so important. Like, I trust all of my employees to make great decisions. Like, now we're such a bigger company than we were just 3. Like, I can't make all the decisions. I don't necessarily have the full insights in all the details and so forth. And then I think also just our take on it, that we talk about it company-wide, our core values or operating principles, and people are able to say, hey, I made this decision, it was great, or actually I screwed up, but we learned something. And you like push people to be smart but uncomfortable. And again, it's a trust, like people feel trusted to do those things. So I think, definitely trust has been an important piece of us being able to like have the company culture that we have. And people needs to feel safe and trusted in order to be innovative as well, because you are going to fail a lot of times when you try to be innovative. It's not a straight path.
Right. Katrine?
About the Nordic model, yes. I mean, I think there was a great summary. We just had the combination of high social mobility and flexicurity that sort of creates these, very dynamic economies. And especially when we're talking about innovation, just as was mentioned, it's all about taking risk, and these models makes it possible for a wider share of the population to take these risks and embrace change. So they are clever models, obviously, but I also agree with the point made that, you can't probably just take them and put them down anywhere in the world. They've evolved in, particular societies and will have to keep evolving. I mean, my perspective to add to that is also the perspective of gender equality, where the Nordic models have done a lot, particularly around very big investments into childcare as infrastructure, which is something like, countries like the UK, where I live now, don't have in place. And by the Nordic models, I mean, we invest around, I think it's around 4% of GDP. So that's close to what the US invests in its military into things like affordable childcare and maternity and paternity leave. And what's so clever about that is that, we get it all, that money back, because you're rewarded then with a higher female employment level, and all those women who are able to do paid work then pay taxes, and that money comes back into the system again. So that's also a very important feature that I do think, also I notice as somebody living outside of the Nordics and participating in the international debate, that people are really looking to those aspects of the Nordics, these sort of gender equality solutions that we have in place much more now. So I think that's certainly something that we should be very, very proud of.
Absolutely. Babou, any comments?
No, I just wanted to second a lot of what's been said. What I'd like to perhaps add is also what's interesting in looking at the specific different markets in the Nordics actually as well, and see where actually some of them are trailblazing, and some might still need to adapt. And it was just interesting that I was looking at the list of most innovative countries in the world, and the 2020 Bloomberg Index for most innovative countries, where the Nordics, out of the 10 most innovative countries, 3 of them were from the Nordics, and it was Finland, Sweden, and Denmark. And that was really interesting for me. And one thing that was interesting was the exclusion of Norway, which I found surprising. But at the same time, when I read about why for example, Sweden was much more innovative than, say, Finland or Denmark, was this inherent sort of historical history of inventors, but also of really promoting gender diversity, just like Katrine said. And also this idea of really celebrating individuality. And I think that when you look at the 4 main Nordic markets, the ones that fare better are the ones that have this inherent celebration of celebrating go-getters, celebrating risk, celebrating individuality. And I think where maybe Norway is still sort of trailing behind is in the idea that the collectivism behind it, which makes actually the mindset of an entrepreneur much harder. I know personally, when I moved to Norway, for example, and I started the company 7 years ago, being an entrepreneur was seen as, people who really don't want to go get a real job. And that has immensely changed just in the 7 years we've been here. I've been there. It's jumped, in scale, and now, entrepreneurs are celebrated. But again, I think these are sort of the elements that we need to take into notice to make sure that we continue to encourage innovation, but also looking at the sort of culture factors that might be keeping us behind.
Idar, you might have a comment to this.
Yes, absolutely, and I think it's a very interesting point. And Norway has been lagging, but at the same time, Norway is catching up very rapidly on a number of areas right now, exactly as Babou says. And there are cultural elements. Sweden has a culture of industry, international markets, very different from Norway historically. But there has always also been structural reasons. A lot of the best talent has been tied up in the oil and gas industry for a number of years. And what we see now is that a massive shift in that talent being released into other sectors, fueling the innovative and entrepreneurial spirit So what we need to do is exactly like Babou says, we need to define entrepreneurs solving problems, creating value, and new jobs as the new heroes. And when I speak to the younger generation, when I speak to my kids, it's very, very different from the perspectives that I met when I grew up. So a lot of things are happening, and I think that we should learn from the other Nordic countries, and indeed we do. One more thing, and that is when applying the Nordic model to innovative ecosystems. One of the puzzles is that a lot of people tend to look to the United States, look to Silicon Valley for inspiration. And I mean, they have unlimited access to financing, unlimited access to resources, and a massive market. We do not have any of those. Relatively small market, relatively limited financial resources, and a limited talent pool. So we need to do what Katrine says. We need to tap into the entire talent pool and motivate all into the innovation ecosystem. And we need to build down or tear down the silos and build bridges to have that cooperative thing, not the extreme competitive thing that we see in Silicon Valley, but the extreme cooperation thing that's characteristic for the Nordic model.
Great. And this is, I completely agree with you. And now, and as you all know, I really want to look into what we can do better. So we know that innovation, even in the Nordic region, hasn't gone as far as our world challenges need us to be. So the question is, what's holding us back to really tap into that potential that the Nordic model provides? And I want to jump in with an answer before everyone else. And I would say that there's some sort of paradox in the way that people are incredibly privileged and flex secure. And that goes against risk-taking and really going into the projects, to the research projects, the entrepreneurial ideas, all in. And I think that this is one of the aspects that is holding us back as a region to really use that potential. I throw it to the floor, and who would like to comment first?
I wouldn't mind commenting, actually. I completely second that, Angela. And I think it actually goes back as well to what Marit was saying. And that's why I think what you're doing with your company is it's really great. It's the idea of being uncomfortable. Because what is risk, right? Risk is actually putting yourself in a situation where you do not know the outcome. And I think that with flex security in Norway, what is great about it, like you said, it was that we have that cushion, right? If we fail, but we still need to change the mentality around failure, because if for such a long time there is this culture in business in Norway where we wait for people to fail, and then we put them up in the news as, you see, they tried, they thought they would be able to do it. And I think if you're stigmatized for failure, if the culture has been about stigmatizing people for failure who have been successful, and it really stops and impedes innovation in the sense that it stops people who might have an idea, might even have started the idea, to actually follow that through, because they will be thinking, well, if I fail even once, I'll be ridiculed. And although this seems like a very simple thing, when you speak to so many entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs, it is a real hurdle. It's a real challenge. It is something that stops them from actually taking action. So I think as much as we need to find ways to, yes, have that security, but also promote that security as the reason why you should go out there and try and fail and be celebrated for that failure, through the learning process of that. So yeah, I think we're getting there. Like I said, you just have to see the news and the coverage on entrepreneurship in Norway, for example, to see that it is miles away from where it was 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago. But I think there is this paradigm shift that has to be done. And again, I go back to my suggestion of we need to start it early. We need to embrace individuality, not as something that separates us or makes us different in a negative way, but actually celebrate that in schools alongside collectivism mentality as something that is needed. And I think Norway has a real opportunity to not redefine the educational system, but look at how within the educational system, whether at kindergarten, school, or universities, they can really incentivize young people to look at innovation and look at entrepreneurship as a real career path and to make changes, to make this world a better place. Because I'm a real proponent of entrepreneurship for good and entrepreneurship, not just to create another t-shirt brand, but actually to solve real issues of our times.
Katrine.
Yes. Well, I think one challenge certainly is this thing, just to keep banging on about it, that, if you're a small country or a cluster of small countries, you need to use all of your talent and all of your potential. And even if you look to Sweden, where I'm from, which is, tends to be hailed as this, unicorn capital of Europe often, and the companies that has come out of Sweden in the last two decades, the tech wonder of Stockholm. If you actually look at that, sort of the founders, they come from, it's a very sort of small group still, even sort of geographically. It's not even all of Stockholm is like a very small area in Stockholm if you follow those investments. And it's expanding on that and expanding on that success. And now obviously in Sweden, there's a lot happening now in northern Sweden around innovation, around green steel and batteries. And that's tremendously exciting. But to keep banging on about, for example, gender equality, I mean, that's an area where, and this is the interesting paradox, that in spite of these societies investing these huge amounts, 4% of GDP into everything that sort of women everywhere else in the world are asking for, affordable childcare, maternity leave, paternity leave, good jobs and so on. That doesn't translate into, for example, something like investments in female founders, where the Nordics are lagging behind the UK and the US. In Sweden, only 1% of venture capital funding, for example, goes to female funders. There was a study a few years ago for all of the Nordics where that number was very similar. And you can say, oh, well, that's just venture capital. That's just one thing, but it is a bigger problem in the sense that, these who get that type of money today, I mean, that those are the business models, or some of them, the business models that will really define our future, the AI of the future, the medications of the future. And if men today in the Nordics almost have a complete monopoly on funding, that is really worrying, I think. So that's something that I would just throw up onto the table here.
Absolutely, and you're touching upon something I feel strongly about, and it's true. The lack of availability of risk capital deployed into women founders, and I would like to bring Idar's perspective on this, because it's not only into female founders, there's lack of risk capital into founders, period. But when it comes to gender equality, and before I pass the word to you, I would like to comment that we tend to think that in the Nordics we're quite equal. And yes, we are, compared to the rest of the world, but there's a way to go. There's a way to go for women in investments, for example. Some women talking about, have you started investing? they would say, well, I never thought I had a place by the table when it comes to the personal decisions, when it comes to finance in my family, investments. And we're in 2020, and still many women in the Nordics think that way. So this is pointing out at some structural issues that that we need to look into more closely and try to resolve. Idar, I pass it to you.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you. And it's an important point. And if you look at the flip side of female entrepreneurs getting venture capital funding, I mean, the flip side of that is who are the venture capitalists, and it's mainly men. And to me, representing the financial services industry, that is a concern. If you look at the totality for banks and insurance companies, I mean, it's 50-50. It's 49% women, 51% men. It's almost equal. If you look at the number of leadership positions in financial services now, 34% of all management positions are held by women. It's not 50% yet, but it's significantly higher than it was 10 years ago. So something is happening in the broader financial services, but too little is happening too late when it comes to the more challenging parts, the more risky parts of financial services and the finance industry, for instance, venture capital. And our answer is that we need to start early in the schools, at the universities. We need to bring out good examples. We need to take Marit out and share her stories, because it's very, very important. And Marit, help us.
Well, yeah, since it was touched upon, like women accessing venture capital, like, yeah, I'm one of them. But it just got me thinking that actually our first investor was a woman. So women who invest in women. So this great angel investor in Norway, Anne Vosje, she was the first one who believed in us or me back when we were just an R&D project. Like, we didn't have a product idea. We didn't know which market we would go after. But me and my two co-founders, we just so strongly believed that this AI technology would be great and could be used for something good. And she was like, yeah, I believe in you guys too. So yeah. And then of course we got some other great investors who believed in us, but she was the first one. But yeah, I was also just, when you were talking, Babou, about like the culture of taking risks and being okay to fail and so forth, because innovation is not a straight path. Like, we have tried so many different things, from like R&D to product. Our product is like less than 2 years old, whereas the company is now 4 years. It was, for the longest of time, we just tried different things. We iterated, pivoted, and so forth. But I really hope that, you know, new government politicians recognize this too, that it's not a straight path, and that they are smart but uncomfortable and willing to try new things. Because if you think about innovation, it's happening faster than ever relative to like humanity. But compared to global warming, it's not maybe happening fast enough. But so we do need to try different things and be willing to take risks and be okay to fail as well. Yeah.
Great. That takes me to my next question. So Norway had its elections for government a week ago. We still can't say the name of the prime minister. I heard this morning, because it's not completely decided yet. But if you could sit down with the new prime minister of Norway, or any world leader for that matter, and to give a piece of advice on how to incentivize innovation and business growth, what would be your advice?
Well, I know one topic that should be, I guess, you, Kristin, you would be, should encourage him to do this, that I saw our current prime minister encouraged the new one, that he cannot reduce the spend on like female education in the bistandsbudget. I completely forgot the English word. So yeah, that's at least one very specific thing. And then just, as I said, be smart but uncomfortable. Try new things. And even though the Mongstad and the moon landing project there didn't work, doesn't mean that, or it hasn't been the success it's was all hyped up to be. We shouldn't stop trying.
Great. Idar, I know you have a lot of knowledge in this area, so I'm going to leave you for last. I'm going to pass the word to Babou.
It's a tall order, to be honest. I think one of the things that can definitely be done is the access to grants, going to where it's needed, in university labs and to companies directly. And a good example of that is in the US, where the National Science Foundation actually pumps in 94% of their grants into university labs and to companies and startups, as opposed to research institutions. And when you compare that, for example, with France, where scientists are basically government employees who work in very prestigious institutions, they are not necessarily incentivized to commercialize their invention as fast. So it comes to the public much slower. And I think we have, as governments, have an opportunity to actually utilize the grants to go directly where it's needed, and the hands of young people to nurture that sort of innovative mindset at the outset, not when they're 30, 40, 50, 60. And I think that's something that is tangible, that can tangibly do, redirect those funds. Another thing is, again, touching on what, really adding to what Marit just said, is really promoting through campaigns and awareness of entrepreneurship, and awareness of starting a business won't leave you necessarily not bankrupt. So taking away that idea of that culture behind fear, which is not validated at the moment. So through campaigning, I think that's also something that you can start slowly shifting mindsets around taking risk, innovation, and in terms of obviously diversity and gender diversity. I think, one of the panelists touched upon, we need to have more representation, and this is something that can be supported by the government, and money can also be put structurally to support women, even more so, who want to start up in business, but can't, but don't have the support system or the funding to do so, with their children at home, or even in terms of the working hours that they do. And I think these are just a few of the things that can be done. But in general, I think it very much has to do with a mindset around innovation as well. And it's great that we've seen in the last decade the idea of open innovation, because innovation for so long has been something that is secretive, that is patented, that is ours, and where that is great for a world where we are not interconnected, we don't have big problems to solve. In the world we live now, we need to have collaborativeness. We have to look at innovation in a very collaborative way, of not hiding our patterns necessarily, of being able to build upon other people's patterns. And I think that's also something that's an area where the government can have a real hand at, in terms of how do we open up the sort of process around patents as well. The time it takes as well for that is really long, and also in terms of the pricing for that is also excessively high. So those are the type of things I think that definitely governments can do, but there has to be a willingness to do it at the outset.
Katrine, what would be your advice?
I think all the Nordic countries need to have a new and uncomfortable discussion around gender equality, actually. And that is connected to this sort of exclusion of women from innovation that, we are are lagging behind when it comes to women and innovation, in spite of spending so much more money than the rest of the world into sort of public policy that's supposed to deliver gender equality, and does it definitely in some areas and not in other areas. And we're not very keen about talking about those areas and about potential conflicts of or unintentional consequences. We're very sort of happy going around the world bragging about how great we are when it comes to gender equality. And for example, this issue of funding to women is a huge problem in all the Nordic countries. It's also the lower glass ceiling that we have, compared to some other countries in Europe when it comes to women in leadership positions, particularly in corporate. How can the glass ceiling in the Nordics actually be lower? In some fields. And thirdly, the very gender segregated nature of our labor markets, where it seems, which is also something that holds innovation back. And so I think, really, looking into these things in a new way and being open to sort of, research and seeing what we find there, so we can adjust our great social models to sort of better deliver there. That's what I would call for in all the Nordic countries.
I'm so glad you said all of that. I wanted to say that myself, but I couldn't say it better. Great. Idar, now I pass it to you.
Thank you. And first to Katrine, we have just this fall launched a big initiative called Women in Finance. It's a cross-sector initiative covering the entire financial services industry, the banks, insurance companies, the investors, the brokers, the investment banks, and also the oil fund is an active participant, exactly to try to dig into some of the issues that you are raising. So let's have a discussion and see on the progress, and I'm happy to share with you, seeing what is happening. But going back to your question, Babou said my first point, stimulate collaboration. Small countries, limited resources, trust-based, we need to collaborate, and we can collaborate. We need to tear down the silos, build bridges between cross-faculty, cross-institutions, public-private, and academia and business. Extremely important, and we can do it. But there are too many silos and too few bridges right now. And we fundamentally believe in the 5-factor model where academia meets the startups, meets business, meets public sector, meets finance and financial services. And to get that working, we need to spend more time on mission-based projects, collaborative incentives. So that's point number one, exactly as Babou says. Point number two is to integrate the Nordic countries significantly more than we have done. We talk about it, but in practice, we are not doing that enough. And we can do that when it comes to developing what you might envisage as one startup region. Where it's the same way of setting up a company in Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland. So it's easy. You could have the same way of doing public purchasing, so that you create large markets for innovative problem solving. And I have written a report for the Nordic Council of Ministers digging into this, and it's a number of low-hanging fruits. And together, we are 27 million people. We are close to the 10th biggest economy on the planet. We are the 4th largest software market on the planet, and we are the most digitized region in the world. So by working together, we can create something very cool, to put it that way. So that's the third advice. And the fourth advice, I guess, is to incentivize entrepreneurship. They accept mistakes, accept the uncomfortable part of it, but the new heroes will be the girls and guys taking risk and coming up with new solutions, so that we are not keeping on doing the same thing and hoping for a different result. We are doing things differently and creating a better society.
Absolutely. And just to wrap up, we can't leave outside the business leaders in big corporations where innovation can happen as well, but also in small entrepreneurial companies. What kind of advice can we give them as we kick off the Oslo Innovation Week? Idar.
I take part in the development of the first innovation district in Norway, Oslo Science City, where we have 7,500 researchers, we have 30,000 students, but we need business to engage, we need finance to engage, and we need to accelerate the development of the startup areas or startup scene in the area. So it's very good, but the potential is significant. So to motivate existing business to take part in the innovation districts in the startup scene and to share and work together with academia is very, very important. And if you look at life sciences, 60% of research happens in the business sector. And by combining that, working together, share laboratories, invite students, PhDs into that process and add on entrepreneurial talent, we think that we can release significant potential going forward.
Fantastic. Yes. Katrine, what would be your advice to business leaders and in small and big companies?
When it comes to innovation, I think know your history, really. I think, particularly around sort of my topics around gender equality and innovation, people don't really know their very recent history. I mean, it's the first programmers in the world were women. Software was invented by women, more or less, in the early 80s when my mother started studying computer science. It was a female-dominated profession. Now we act as if, women have never existed in the tech space, I think there's a way we sort of think of innovation and the history of innovation. I certainly, when I'm out giving keynotes on these topics, and I put up my sort of depressing numbers on the screens behind me, and there's always some, very polite man in a suit coming up to me afterwards saying, I'm an investor and, I hear what you're saying about this problem investing in women, but, it's just a historical fact. Women have not, have access to this space. And therefore, the situation as it is now is that actually men have better business ideas than women. And I'm an investor and, I have to sort of be rational in the here and now. And maybe in sort of 100 and 150 years, women will have caught up and so on. And I think all of that is because there's the way we tell the story of innovation and the story of technology is in a way that has sort of excludes, women and women's inventions. I think it was Babou that mentioned earlier, that Sweden is considered to be successful when it comes to innovation. And one of the reasons is that, we've been good at celebrating inventors and innovators and we are, but we just celebrate the men. There's, I talk about these stories in my book, but, everybody from the Swedish female inventor of the wheeled walker, which has transformed lives of millions of elderly people, we don't sort of celebrate her, or the fact that, mobile phone technology was basically, invented by another Swedish woman. I think knowing your history and including, women and also, back into that story is very important if you're trying to sort of do something about diversity today, which we need to do because everybody knows it's intuitive that innovation happens when different perspectives meet, but, why are we not doing it? So that would be my slightly unconventional advice.
Thank you. Babou, what would be your advice?
I think it would be democratizing innovation at corporation level in startups as well. And what I mean by that is putting structurally and also in systemizing innovation across the board, so that the person who is the secretary feels like that she can add value in the business with her ideas and be able to share, be recognized and be heard for them, and across the spectrum. So as I said, from a lower management all the way to higher management. And what tends to happen in not so much in startup world, I think it's embedded in our DNA right as a startup. It's because we have low resources. Everybody comes at the table equally with the same ownership most of the time. But in corporations, this is a very different story, where innovation is at the hand of a department, at the hand of a few people making the decision of what is innovative or not. And I think that needs to change by changing our mindset and also structurally changing it within the organization to democratize this process. And there are companies who have done it successfully really well, from Starbucks, and where they've built their own open innovation websites, where they encourage not only consumers but also employees to just share ideas on problems that they have. So they post every week a problem, and then anybody within the organization, doesn't matter who they are, can actually submit ideas on how to solve this problem. And these are examples like that I think we need to see more of, for innovation to thrive and also for innovation to be sustainable. Because I think, again, when innovation is held in close hands and is not open, what tends to happen is you get moments of innovation through the product development, but a company who's sustainable, or who can sustain it by empowering everybody across the spectrum to be innovative or to think innovatively. Those are the companies I think of the future.
Thank you. And before I pass it to Marit, who's the business leader in a startup sitting here with us, I want to say that the heroes that Idar mentioned before don't have a nationality, a specific culture, a specific look. So being inclusive, not only gender, but within gender as well, and within racial diversity. That would be my call to action. Marit, wrap it up.
So my advice to business leaders in large corporations would just be to be open for the fact that good ideas can come from anywhere. And just that's how it is.
Wonderful. Thank you all for this panel. I enjoyed very much these conversations, and I hope you can take some good points and implement them in your companies. And we hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.